Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Today we have a special guest, Skyler Peters. We're going to get into some of the spring training bats and what the opening day roster could look like.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. By the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Today we have a special guest, our friend Skyler Peters, degenerate gambler.
What an intro.
I had to start like that. Huge Blue Jays fan. He's going to be hopping on here once in a blue moon when me or Carter are away or super sick. We almost have to be deathly ill, but you never know, especially the way that it's been going for me this year. Already 2, I think, in the books. And yeah, we just want to get into some spring training talk on how the bats have been heating up and can we see these guys continue to be good throughout the start of the season? What our opening day roster could look like, who's going to be on the bench, who's going to be starting at second and third. I think those are the two biggest, question marks around the team right now. And finally, we're going to get into our biggest disappointments as we look ahead to this season. Who are the players that are going to let us down? We've done episodes on who the breakout players will be, who are really pumped to watch. Today, we're going to sort of dial back the Jays hype a little bit and pull back the curtain. So Carter, I'll throw it to you. Do you want to, sort of get into some statistics before we ask Skyler sort of his thoughts?
Yeah, we might as well get right into it. So the Toronto Blue Jays, as fans have been putting up a lot of runs in the last week, especially. And that has been led from a ton of players on the team just having a good spring training, hitting their average, getting some good contact, hitting the ball hard. So I've broken this down into 2 subcategories. One of them is just the stars, the players that we should expect to be good this season. And the other one is a little bit less proven guys, maybe guys that are coming off of down years. So we're going to start with the guy that we have been talking about probably the most on this podcast, and that is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's had a great spring training so far. He has 29 at-bats, 13 hits, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, 20 total bases, a 4.48 average, and an OPS of 1.190. So that's over 1,000 OPS. Then we got Bo Bichette, who has 45 at-bats, 17 hits, really good at going up the middle, opposite way, a 3.78 average with a 9.25 OPS. 1 home run, 6 RBIs, 24 total bases. And then a guy that's coming off of a down year last season is George Springer, a guy that, again, has been having a great spring training, finally starting to get back to where he was with the Blue Jays in 2021 and 2022. He has 31 at-bats, 12 hits, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 22 total bases, 6 walks with only 3 strikeouts, a 3.87 average with a 1,196 OPS. So, Skyler, out of these 3 stars the Toronto Blue Jays have, which one do you expect to bounce back? Which one do you expect to continue the success in the regular season? And who do you think will be the best player for this team offensively for the Toronto Blue Jays?
Well, the Toronto Blue Jays' best player is definitely Bo Bichette. I don't think that's really up for a whole lot of debate. I think the player with the highest ceiling is definitely Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We saw that so early on in his career, but he's just really struggled to get back to that level. And now it gets to the point where, he's reaching the end of that guaranteed service time as a member of the Blue Jays. And we're talking about whether or not he's going to be with this club. Like at the outset of his career back in 2019, you would have never thought that we'd be having this conversation, especially the way he and Bo played once they got to the big club. Bo's obviously been the more consistent guy. Injury really hurt him last year. A healthy 162 games, that Bo Bichette is available to this team, I think gives the Blue Jays the best chance to, win 90 plus, get into probably the AL wild card and make some noise here for sure. At least maybe put up a fight in the AL East, but obviously that's going to be so tough. Springer for me is tough. I mean, this guy's getting a bit older. He's on a big contract. There's a lot expected of him. I think the move to right last year was great for him because it takes, some wear and tear off the body that he's been through a lot, obviously with injuries over his career. A little more roster management from John Schneider this year, I think can certainly help George. But, if I was to rank the guys in terms of the years I'm expecting of them, I'd definitely go Bo up top, Vladdy in the middle. Obviously, everyone's hoping he has another massive year. He'll be such a big part of a successful Jays team if he can. And then I do think Springer will, kind of stay consistent. I do feel like we're probably going to see a 2023-2 season probably coming from George up and right, though.
Yeah, and I think that, you sort of hit the nail on the head in the sense, we've been talking about it all year so far, is that Bo Bichette is by far the most consistent player on this team when he's healthy. And I think the talk in Vlad and his upside is very interesting because I think everybody is looking at this spring training and thinking that this huge bounce back is going to happen. And I think maybe people have to tame their expectations a little bit, just in the sense that it's a long season. He obviously had some stuff to figure out from last year. So, and I don't necessarily know if that can happen just in one spring training or over one off season. So it's going to be interesting moving forward. Carter, I'm sort of interested to hear who you have sort of as those outsiders that are either new players or players on the come up right now.
Yeah, as for Skyler's rankings, I have to 100% agree. I think Bo Bichette is easily the most consistent guy on this team. This is a make it or break it year for Vladdy. We got to see these home runs come. We got to see the power come back. If we have another down season from Vladdy, there might be some talks of, is this guy the superstar that we really thought he was? And with George Springer, hopefully we do get a bounce back from him, but he has to be third on this list when you have generational talents like Vladdy, like Bo coming into their primes. So with spring training, the funnest part for me to watch is the guys that weren't guaranteed to make the roster. These guys that are just battling, kind of trying to figure out coming to their own in the big leagues. And one guy that has been doing that, and from the Santiago Espinal trade, I believe has earned this spot on the Toronto Blue Jays roster, and that is Ernie Clement. This guy's having an unbelievable spring training, 36 at-bats, 13 hits. He has a triple, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 24 total bases. Only 1 walk, but also only 1 strikeout in 36 at-bats. That's under a 3% strikeout percentage from Ernie Clement, which is ridiculous. 361 average and a 1,045 OPS. Another guy who has been playing really good this spring training, who's coming off of a down year, Dalton Varsho, has 35 at-bats, 13 hits, a home run, 9 RBIs, 9 walks, only 4 strikeouts. Let's walk in 2 times the amount he's striking out, which is obviously good to see. A 371 average and a 1,032 OPS. Then a guy hasn't had a ton of at-bats this spring training, but a guy I wanted to throw into this conversation is Cavan Biggio. 18 at-bats, 6 hits, so that's hitting 333 with an OPS of 1,020. Has 3 doubles, walked 7 times, struck out 7 times. And then another guy coming off of a down year who's going to have a bigger role, especially at the start of the season, Alejandro Kirk, who obviously with the Danny Jansen injury, he won't be ready for opening day. This guy has probably had the best spring training so far out of anyone on the Blue Jays. 30 at-bats, 12 hits, 4 doubles, 3 home runs. Nice to see that power come back for Kirk. 8 RBIs, 25 total bases, only 2 walks and 2 strikeouts, 400 average, and a 1,271 OPS. So that these guys are guys that are coming off of down years, maybe not as proven as some of our superstars. Of these 4 guys, Skyler, who do you see having a more consistent season at the plate, and who do you see producing the best offensive output for the Toronto Blue Jays?
I think the most consistent season at the plate is going to be Dalton Varsho. I think a lot had to be expected of him, given what was given up to get him in that trade with Arizona coming into the 2023 season. He provided a lot defensively, obviously, best defensive outfield in the majors last year, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people around the league would probably agree with that, but we never really saw it at the plate. The guy that just get buried in the order, you can't really count on him for a whole lot. He had flashes. I remember a big go-ahead homer, I think, in July, and I don't know if that was a grand slam or a multi-run shot that he hit, but I think that's what I watched that, and I was like, that's what I wanted to see out of Dalton Varsho when he became a Blue Jay. I mean, he's obviously so young. I do love the bunt in his game. He's willing to do it. It's not great, but at least you're out there. And you know what? Sometimes you need it. Like, I don't know what your guys' opinion on the bunt is, but it's something that the Blue Jays lineup doesn't really have if he's not in it. So, and I just think it's hilarious when he lays one down for the boys. It's good comedy. So I would take out of that group Dalton to be the most consistent, because you can obviously expect him to start in left, 3/4 of the season. This guy's going to play 140 games if he doesn't get injured, that sort of thing. Kirk is intriguing because we've seen him string together months at a time of consistent baseball. I remember him hitting for 1,000 OPS in the regular season. I think it was 2 years ago in like June. He was just a complete animal out there running the bases and getting these extra base hits and stuff like that. Jano comes back, he's going to start a ton of games because Brian Servant, I think, is going to be the backup. This is a guy that a lot of Jays fans who are just starting to tune into this team as, opening day approaches, they have no idea who this guy is. I didn't know who this guy is, coming into the start of spring training. He's going to be the backup. He's going to get some Tyler Heineman reps from last year, that sort of thing, backup catching. But we could probably expect Kirk to start, 80% of the games at catcher until Jano gets, fully back. And I do prefer Jano at the plate as a catcher instead of at the plate as a batter in the catcher spot instead of Kirk. That's just me, I think, with the power that he possesses, and but the injuries are just such a concern. So that split time with Kirk, I think, is going to be an issue, but I do expect a big year out of him too. And man, this might be the summer of Clement, boys. I'm big on Ernie Clement too. This is awesome. Like the Davis Schneider explosion was like so hot and so fast. And then, he kind of rode pine for all of August, and it was so frustrating. And at the same time, Ernie Clement was kind of doing that too, but he was hitting well last year at the same time as Davis. Obviously, the spotlight was well taken from him by what Schneider was doing. But I think Clement is a major leaguer and is a major league ball player, and I think he could be a big piece of that middle infield moving forward, especially if we start talking about these Bo Bichette conversations and the deal he might get, and if he might get it elsewhere in the years to come too. I really like Ernie's game, especially with the amount of chess pieces that we have in the infield right now.
Yeah, and I think when we look back at those three guys specifically, Ernie Clement is the biggest question mark because of what we saw with Davis Schneider and what John Schneider is thinking of doing with him. I don't want to see Ernie Clement come into this team and ride the pine for half the year, or play 2 games, then miss a week, and then play 2 games and then miss a week. That's not what I want to see. I want to see consistency in this lineup, and I think that's what hurt Davis Schneider at the end of last year, is that he wasn't getting those consistent at-bats. So if we can get Ernie Clement in there, and if he's going to be the opening day starter or second baseman, then leave him there. Let him work for a month. Let him figure everything out. And I think the upside there could be really high. Dalton Varsho, I think, gets a really bad rap. Didn't have the best season last year, but gets a really bad rap when it comes to Blue Jays fans. I think moving forward, he's just going to keep progressing, keep building. He's obviously a guy that wants to put in the work and the time and the effort, with the hitting coaches going out to visit him in his small town and work out some things with him this off season. So I think there could be a really big bounce back from him. And Kirk, I mean, yeah, it's tough. I think Danny Jansen is the more versatile player. I think that he can be used a little bit more effectively. But again, it's one of those better catching tandems in the league right now. So I think, if you have to rely on Kirk, I think this isn't the end of the world for Blue Jays fans.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, Carter, before you go, one thing about Kirk that I noticed last year was his defense was actually really good at the plate. Yeah. And it was kind of undershadowed because he's obviously the primary catcher for Alek Manoah, and Manoah just struggled. And I'm wearing the Manoah jersey right now. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to break it out of the closet, by the way, boys, because I don't wear this in public right now. But that the defensive part of his game is not something I worry about. I think we've always known that Danny Jansen's a good defensive catcher, so it's nice to take that. Obviously, if he stays consistent, take that element away from something that you're kind of wondering if he's going to bring to the table every night or not. I have full confidence in Kirk's defensive play after what I saw last year.
Kirk made huge defensive strides last season. He's very great at blocking the ball behind the plate. And one thing that I'm taking from these 4 players is when you look at Alejandro Kirk, you do have the Danny Jansen backup, where if Kirk isn't playing as well, you can throw Jano in a little bit more at the plate. You can throw him in. You have more options with Danny Jansen. You do have Brian Servant as well, who's had an unbelievable spring training. And you look at Ernie Clement, playing a little bit more left field. I think that's interesting because I'm not sure if the Blue Jays like Davis Schneider out there as much. Maybe they don't like his defensive ability out there. So I think that's going to be something to watch in this spring training and for coming in the regular season. But with Dalton Varsho, I think Dalton Varsho might be the biggest key to the Blue Jays' success this upcoming season. Because when you're looking at this outfield depth, you have George Springer, Kevin Kiermaier, Dalton Varsho. The next player that you're relying on is Nathan Lucas. And being that he had a great spring training, I'm not as confident relying on Nathan Lucas if you have to have a spare of somebody who's playing like Dalton Varsho. If he's having the same season as he has last season, I'm not going to be very comfortable with our hitting from the outfield, especially when you got Kevin Kiermaier, who's getting a little bit older in age, had a great season last year. Can we expect to keep that up? I'm not entirely sure. So Dalton Varsho is going to be my biggest watch for this upcoming season. I think we're going to expect a huge bounce back year from him, hopefully 30-plus home runs. We can get that from a guy in the middle of the order. I think that's going to be huge for this Blue Jays team going forward. So,
Just to interject quick. When we talked about our biggest keys to this season, Dalton Varsho obviously was one of those pieces. He was our number 5 because I think his impact on this team could be so huge for the middle of the lineup. Like you said, we know what he can do defensively. He's an absolute rock star out there, but it's his hitting. And if he can figure that out this season, I think that just pushes the Blue Jays to a whole nother level. With way more hitting depth than they, saw last year when 2 of your 3 outfielders weren't really hitting the baseball too well.
Oh, 100%. And especially with a guy that has the best defensive runs saved in the league. Like Skyler said, it can be in the conversation as one of the best defenders in the league. So if you can get some offensive production from a guy that's putting that good of defensive stats out there, I think we're going to have a very successful season with Dalton Varsho. So saying that, we do have some opening day roster decisions that we want to get into, but we do have some sponsors that we want to outline on this podcast as well. So we'll get into that after this. Today's episode sponsor is Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $145 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, buy that flight you've been craving, that Blue Jays game you're dying to go to, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and get real cash that you can cash out of your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over $50 million savers. Earn cash back every time you shop for over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering listeners $5 just for trying out Ibotta and using code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store and Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play Store or App Store and using the code LOCKEDONMLB.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. As always, say goodbye to busted brackets because March Madness is upon us. FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney, whether you're betting on big upset or a 1 seed. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. We brought in the most degenerate gambler we know, Skyler Peters, to give us his picks for the day. Skyler, what do you got for us?
Thanks, boys. I am going to try to load this up, actually, because you gave me a good aside. I am not the most degenerate. Here it is. So this is my father in Vegas yesterday. I had no idea he was going to Vegas. I think he's there for a convention related to his business. So he texts me. I think he's at the Circa. And, he sends me the board. I know you probably can't see it that well. But he says, what does the -117 plus 107 mean? And I'm trying to coach this guy from Winnipeg, Manitoba. He's on the floor at Vegas, living my dream right now. And he's got some futures on the golf. So good for him. Best of luck to Brian Harman at the US Open, 60-1. So I guess if you're a fan of that, go for it. Tonight, though, it's all about the Winnipeg Jets, boys. Obviously, they're in New Jersey on the Rock, taking on the Devils. The Devils gave up on the season, trading 2 of their players to the Jets in Colin Miller and Tyler Toffoli, who's been just electric. And the Jets are only -125 on the money line, so hammered that. And I also got him in reg tonight too. So by the time you guys hear this on Friday morning, you're gonna know my fate. But you want me to get into these season bets for the Blue Jays now, boys, or do you want to wait till later?
You know what? Yeah, we'll finish up this ad and then we'll get into the season futures. Okay. Right.
All of the Jets tonight, boys. -125. Nobody's hearing this, but you two are. So make sure you hit it before 6 o'clock. All right.
Hammer in the bets. I have the Jets as well tonight. I have a 5-team parlay down. Actually, probably not going to hit, but that's just how it is. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. So we actually got into on the season preview. Some of you may have saw that. It just came out yesterday. I think part 1 of 5 came out on our channel. In another part, we did do the FanDuel over-unders, I believe, for the season for the Blue Jays, which I believe I picked the over on. Skyler, what do you got for Blue Jays futures this year?
Yeah, well, obviously the win total is something that a lot of people are looking at. FanDuel right now has got it at, I think, 86.5. And the juice is, sorry, boys, if I can scroll down here, a little bit towards the over. I mean, this is a team we expect to win 90 games. So, given how previous seasons have gone for the Blue Jays, people are down on this team. Not to sum up my thoughts of this team in 30 seconds, but I mean, this rotation was so good last year. They can basically only regress. I would say they're probably the second best rotation in the league last year. And, obviously some other teams have made some big moves and stuff like that. Although Yoshinobu Yamamoto, boys, tough to debut at
not
Seoul.
looking great so far. That fastball isn't looking too good.
That was a meatball, not a fastball, boys. I don't know. He got rocked and got out of the first. So maybe the Jays do have the second best rotation in the league. I don't know, but I'm going on the over. I'm not going to sit here as a Blue Jays fan and, the Jays lose a 3-2 game to Cleveland in August. And I'm like, yes, closer to the under, boys, closer to under 86.5. I'm not doing that. So, I'll pay whatever the price. And, to see something starting in the 80s for the Jays, I think, and, a team that can underachieve these expectations. Yeah, that's going to be a disastrous season, but there's a lot more room to overachieve that, I think is kind of represented by the juice. So minus 115 on the over 86.5. And I'm taking them to win 90 plus and 152 as well. Cause I'm a homer. So let's do it.
No, and on the season preview, I said that I think there is going to be 3 teams in this division this season that hit the 90 win mark. And I think the Blue Jays are one of them. I think they might be in that third slot, but I don't think that's out of the question this year. You play less games against your division. So at the end of the day, there's more wins to go around this season. So I think that's a fantastic bet. And I think if it's open for you guys right now, I think you have to hammer that. You know what? Before we get into the opening day roster, Skyler, I did want to know who you got winning the entire league or the AL East this year. I'll leave it at the AL East because we had a debate about this a little bit.
I don't think Baltimore's going to do it 2 years in a row. I think there's some regression coming for a young team and a fairly experienced manager and stuff like that. But I can't see them. They're not getting 100. I will eat my hat, boys, if they win 100. And you saw in the playoffs, they're not ready. They're an unbelievable team. And we saw Jackson Holiday a couple of days ago at spring training, beat out a throw to first. I don't think if he actually did though, from Bo, who was kind of lazily picking a base hit up right on the second base bag. And I mean, he's got the power obviously, and they got some other guys waiting in the wings too. Like this lineup is crazy. They're going to be a problem. The additions they made to the rotation are awesome and stuff too, but you kind of got to go for the evil empire, I think. And I do think the Yankees are probably going to get this done. I have stayed away from it because I don't believe the Blue Jays have what it takes to win this division. So I don't know if you got the numbers in front of you, boys. If I had to pick, I would pick the Yankees. Also, though, I'm looking at the Red Sox number right now, plus 680 to win 90 plus. Alex Cora says they're all about vibes. I mean, maybe they just kind of go on a stupid
run. This is insane. What are we doing?
Plus 680. It's plus 680. Just consider it for a little splash. And you know what? Because the Jays are inevitably going to go into Fenway and get swept. And then you're going to when the Sox string together 3 wins in a row for the first time in a month and a half. But it's possible. It's hard to believe these good teams will stay down for long. Good organizations, and obviously the Steinbrenners in New York and Juan Soto's. It's going to be an issue, boys. Let's face it. So I think the Yanks will probably finish this one on top.
That's where we had them as well. Me and Carter went over it a little bit before I hopped on the season preview with the rest of the AL East, and I had the Yanks as well. No one else in the AL East had the Yankees winning the division, which I thought was insane.
Including the Yankees, guys?
Including the Yankees.
And that's the craziest part.
The O's, or did they have the Rays?
Yeah, they had the O's. Rays, where it seemed like everybody was hovering around the 3-4 mark with the Blue Jays.
I just think their ceilings, it's kind of capped with trading Glasnow. They're going to turn some guy we've never heard of into a Cy Young finalist. Don't just bet on it. I'm going to take a look at their rotation and just start splashing Cy Young futures on these guys because they always do. But I completely agree.
Yeah. So it is going to be sort of interesting to see how this year ends up finishing out. Sorry, Carter, you had something there. I sort of cut you off.
Yeah, just before we get into that, I'm just curious. So you have the Yankees win the division. You said the Orioles are probably going to be pretty good. I'm assuming you have them over 90 wins as well. You don't want to go against the Jays. You want to hammer 90 wins, but also the Red Sox going over 90 wins.
Oh,
The entire AL East going to have over 90 wins.
Let's be clear. I'm never going to get allowed back on this podcast. I'm not saying the Red Sox are going to win.
If the Red Sox win 90 games, I will riot in the streets.
I just said it's plus 680. What do you think the Orioles line on was 90 plus last year? It wasn't plus 680. I bet you it was 400 plus. I mean, obviously they have crazy odds to win the AL East. I'm just saying anything can happen.
If the Red Sox win 90 games this year, there will be riots in the streets of downtown Winnipeg. I promise you, and it'll just be me running down.
It's not a riot when it's just we see that all the time. It's Winnipeg, boys.
It's Winnipeg. Yeah, you're right.
And you know what? Honestly, if you're going to take the Sox plus 680, you may as well take Rafael Devers to win AL MVP because they're happening together, or neither of them are happening. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I just said it's worth some consideration.
I think when we get the three of us on here, this just divulges into chaos. This is what's going on. Skyler drops in a little bit of chaos here, and then people start thinking the Red Sox are going to be a good team somehow.
That's not what I said.
No, he's on the train that if you're going to ride the Red Sox, you might as well go all in. I can respect that.
I'm sorry, you're going to have to be on our TikTok page now. That's what you've done.
I'm going to look up the Rafael Devers MVP odds. You just keep going. I'll be back.
Okay, we'll get into opening day rosters. If you know what, I don't know what's going to happen if the Red Sox somehow win 90 games, but Skyler, you're going to be all over our TikTok page today after this because Carter won't let this slide without posting something. Carter, what do you got us?
Sorry, boys.
No,
we're going to have an 8-hour-long pod. I'm going to shut up, I promise. Can I give you one future that I do believe in?
Yes.
Had it last year. It's a little worse number this year, which I'm kind of grumpy about, especially because Juan Soto was transferred over from the NL into the AL. But I am taking Bo Bichette to lead the league in hits at 5-1 and lead MLB in hits at 10-1. I did both last year. He was doing very well until the injury. He was a little bit behind going into August, but I mean, he gave me a chance, and I was looking at a positive cash out for quite some time. So that is the one that I seriously do believe could happen.
Okay, so you hit the ceiling of that's a fantastic bet to take. And then you hit the Red Sox. Well, you're all over the scale right now today.
That's betting, man.
Betting. Well, okay. Yeah. I looked at my line over the past 12 months of how my betting's been going. You want to know how great I am at betting? I'm up $10.08 in a year.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I will show you. I have an 18% ROI in the last. I can't invest in the S&P 500 and make this much money, boys. So just saying. I'm just saying.
Okay, stick with his Red Sox bet. Let's see what happens.
Rafael Devers, 22-1 to win AL MVP. There you go, folks.
There we go.
Blue Jays / Red Sox talk.
Okay, we do got to get into opening day rosters. Carter, I'm going to throw it to you. I don't even know where to go from here. My mind is just so gone. Let's break down. Carter, just break down our opening day rosters from the positions we know that are guaranteed. Then we'll go into the question marks a little bit.
Yeah, this spring training and opening day is interesting just due to the amount of injuries we've already had, and we haven't even gotten to the regular season. But saying that, there are a few locks on this roster. Obviously, you have Vladdy at first base. That is not up for discussion. Alejandro Kirk will be catching this season until Danny Jansen gets back. You might see a little bit of Brian Serven, but that is pretty much Alejandro Kirk's spot until Danny Jansen gets back. Bo Bichette at shortstop. Not going to say too much else on that. That's pretty obvious. George Springer will be right field. That one's, again, pretty obvious. It's nice they made that transition. I think it's going to help with George Springer's longevity in the league. And then after that, you kind of have a little bit of uncertainty, to say the least. The most common starter in center field is going to be Kevin Kiermaier, but I do see some switching up. Dalton Varsho could be over there a few times. You might see Ernie Clement in left field. You might see Dave Schneider in left field. And saying that, when Kevin Kiermaier is playing center, Dalton Varsho is going to be in left field. That one's not really up for debate either. The starting rotation right now is a little bit vague just due to the injuries, but it's starting out. It's looking like it's going to be Barrios, Bassett, Kikuchi, Bowden, Francis. And then the fifth spot is still open. They haven't made an official statement on that. Relievers, that is a whole mosh pit of things that could happen. So we can get into that after. And the two positions really on the Toronto Blue Jays that are undecided, and we'll see a lot of changes throughout the season, are second base and third base. So I'm just going to give this to Skyler, open floor. Who do you think has the best chance of starting opening day at second and then at third base?
Well, I will say one thing. The longer free agency went on, the more I wondered if Whit Merrifield was going to come back. And I saw his deal with the Phillies, and I thought, man, like I don't think I'd be too unhappy if the Jays did that. I do think they kind of dug their grave with infield decisions with the signing of IKF and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, should start this season at third base, and he should get that chance. He's a Gold Glover, and I think if you put anybody other than him on the three bag, Blue Jays fans are going to kind of forget how good Matt Chapman. Like I think we took it for granted. It's not just the spectacular plays, hard outs. Like he throws the ball a million miles an hour to Vladdy or Brandon Belt or whoever's playing it first that day. Stuff like that. It almost sets the tone defensively. In a game where an Alek Manoah starts giving up some contact in the first or second, that sort of thing. So I really hope IKF can land this starter spot and provide defense first. We'll worry about the bats later because there are enough guys on this roster that should provide a big bat in the first half of the order that we shouldn't have to worry about what IKF is hitting unless he's, having a Brandon Belt start to the year last year, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go him at 3. And I think you got to, I just want to see Davis Schneider get a month straight of starts in the major leagues. I think that would just be so huge for him. And, he's not going to slash what he did, in that amazing run that started in Fenway last year, obviously, but he's a major leaguer. And, I say that about Ernie Clement too. And, these guys deserve to play. And I don't know what John Schneider's hesitancy is about these guys not getting consistent at bats. I can understand it when you have a proven vet and a winner like Whit Merrifield, guy with a World Series ring that's standing in front of you in the pecking order, but that's not there this year. And there's no Matt Chapman in front of IKF. So I do expect Davis to be the primary guy at second. But I do really hope Cavan Biggio can provide some power with that left-handed bat too. So if they have to platoon the two bag between those two guys, I'm not going to be disappointed for sure.
You know what? It's tough because we sort of just had this discussion. I don't know how many episodes ago now, but it was sort of the talk on was the Whit Merrifield decision the best looking back on it now? Probably not. And that's what's sort of frustrating because I think that would have filled a huge hole here, especially for the price point that they got him for, which is a little bit upsetting. But I'm sort of with you. I'm a huge Davis Schneider fan. I think I've made that abundantly clear on this podcast. So for him to get consistent starts at second base is what I want. Do I think that that's what's going to happen? No. Yeah. I'm sort of in the thinking of there's no one else you can put at third base right now because my ideal thing would be to leave Cavan Biggio at 3 and then go Davis Schneider at 2 and see where Ernie Clement fits in the beginning part of the season. But right now it's going to be IKF. That it's spending, $15 million on a guy. That's where you're going to have to put him. And then what do you do with Cavan Biggio? I think he's proven himself that he can handle himself there. And yeah, does he have the ceiling that Davis Schneider or maybe Ernie Clement does? Probably not. But I think seeing what John Schneider's done in the past, I could definitely see the opening day being Cavan Biggio and IKF.
Are you guys Cavan Biggio, do you believe he has something to give to the Toronto Blue Jays still? Because I remember in August, he had an unassisted double play and a go-ahead homer, I think a half inning apart against Cleveland. I'm like, this is what we saw when he came up into the majors in April or May of 2019, I think it was. And that's still there for me. So, and obviously we talked about the need for, a bat on the left side of the plate, and he could provide that against righties, which you're going to see most of the time. I'm fine if he takes over Davis in that order.
No, and I'd be totally fine with that as well. I think Cavan Biggio gets way more hate, which this is going to sound a little contradictory about coming up in our third segment right away. But Cavan Biggio, I think, has a lot to give, and I think he should just be playing at 3. I realistically think that IKF doesn't have a great. I don't think he fits this roster very well right now, especially with how good our young guys are doing. Is IKF the answer? Probably not. I could see, coming down the stretch in the year and he's sitting on the bench, not getting an at bat. So ideally, we have keep Cavan Biggio in the lineup, put him at third, still have that left-handed bat in the lineup, and we get Davis Schneider in the lineup or Ernie Clement. You ride the hot hand a little bit.
No, I view the IKF signing as almost like a safety net for the third base position because you go into it, you want David Schneider playing, you want Ernie Clement playing, you want Cavan Biggio playing, but none of these guys are proven at third base, and that's why again, when you look at this Whit Merrifield signing for the contract, I think it was $7 million. Yeah, it would have been nice to bring him back for that value, but I've always kind of been more on the side of let our younger guys play. And with the second base, like utility man position on this team already being so jam packed with a ton of players, I think you pay Whit Merrifield that's just another mouth to feed. It's kind of hard to get all these guys to play the playing time that they're going to need to be successful. And that's why, again, I don't even really like this IKF signing either, because I would much rather just see Ernie Clement and David Schneider play third or second, or vice versa. You throw Cavan Biggio there. Any three of those combinations I'm okay with, because these are younger guys. There's going to be higher upside. What you've seen from David Schneider and Ernie Clement last season and in spring training for Ernie Clement, he's been unbelievable. He's been way better than IKF is ever going to play, Whit Merrifield's ever going to play, all these players. So I think with third and second base, I would have been a lot more comfortable if they just platooned it to these three younger guys and just kind of ride the hot hand, as Braden said. But the way it's constructed right now, I think IKF is going to be playing third base the majority of the time. And that second base position is kind of going to be the position where they ride the hot hand. They think David Schneider's playing good for this week. Let's throw David Schneider in. Ernie Clement's been good in spring training. Let's throw him at the start of the season. So I think it's going to be a very platoon position throughout the entirety of the year. As for Cavan Biggio, for me right now, he's the one I believe in least out of these three players. I've seen enough from Ernie Clement. I have him at number 2. I do want to see David Schneider along with you guys have some more playing time considering what he did last season. But I think John Schneider opening day is going to go to Cavan Biggio at 2 and IKF at 3. These are guys that are a little bit more proven. IKF's a veteran, obviously Gold Glover, and then Cavan Biggio's just been on the team longer. So I think John Schneider has a little bit more faith in Biggio as opposed to Clement and Schneider.
And I think you're right. And I think the safety net aspect of what you said is where this is at. Cavan Biggio is a safety net. He is good, and he's a good player.
IKF or Cavan Biggio.
Cavan Biggio, and IKF the same way. He's good defensively. He's not going to hurt you out there. But these young guys have so much more potential, and I don't think they really know what to do with them right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a debate that goes through the entirety of the rest of spring training and the start of the season. Hopefully the Jays just go with the hot hand, but we'll see how John Schneider plays it. He doesn't have the greatest history of making decisions for this Toronto Blue Jays team. So before we get into this last segment, we do have one more sponsor, but I wanted to throw it over to our 24/7 streaming channel at Locked On. With March Madness going on, ton of college basketball games, it'd be a perfect opportunity to get our experts' insight on our Locked On streaming channel. So just go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to our first ever national 24/7 streaming channel.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and one of the big pro sports leagues, college conferences as well. As you guys know, we Locked On MLB, all the Locked On channels are on Fire TV. So if you guys have Fire TV, you can watch our videos directly on there. It's great. You can listen always to our podcasts on Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts as well. TV channels lets you dive into game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date on all the latest in the worlds of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel. Might as well throw in cooking in there as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. So, Skyler, I mean, there's one more thing that I wanted to just get a little bit of your peace of mind on here. Today at work, all of us are sitting there, and the Shohei Ohtani news breaks. Okay, everybody is a little bit unsure of what's going on. I did a lot of research today to try to figure out what the timeline is and everything, because I got Jim Toth asking me if that this is all legit. And so I did a little digging. Shohei Ohtani has an interpreter. The interpreter gets fired over gambling and theft. He came out a few days ago and said that Ohtani paid off his debts and knew about his gambling, wasn't happy about it, but paid off his debts. Then it comes out, I think it was today, and he says that Ohtani had nothing to do with the bets. He had no idea, had no clue what was going on. They fire the interpreter. And it turns out Ohtani's name is on the 4.5 million plus two $500,000 checks or wire transfers. So in your thinking, does this come back to harm Shohei Ohtani, or is this interpreter going to be a fall guy?
I have 3 thoughts, and to answer your question with my first thought, no, I don't. It doesn't matter what Shohei Ohtani did. He is way too big to the major leagues to, any discipline. Because we talk about like Pete Rose, this guy can't go to baseball games. He can't manage a ball club. It can't be in the Hall of Fame, all this stuff. Like we're talking almost on the same level as that. Obviously there's no, accusations that he bet on Dodger or Angels games, I guess last season, anything like that. But he's too big to fail, I think, for the MLB, especially after signing that deal, which is just incredible. This comes out now. Secondly, there might be another wire transfer going to Shohei Ohtani's interpreter for being the fall guy too. A little bit of severance, that's possible. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not here to speculate. I actually didn't, do a ton of reading on what's going on, but just what I've heard very basically scrolling Twitter, that sort of thing, hearing from you guys, it certainly seems plausible that was the case. And, Shohei is going to he makes $65 million a year with the deferred salary. That's how much he makes in endorsements. That it's not, he can pay him whatever. It doesn't matter. And this guy can go away forever and it's going to be fine. And thirdly, now I lost my train of thought. So I think I might have to leave it at 2 thoughts there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, here we go. Thirdly, I don't know if you guys remember this when the contract came out. Obviously, we're in the middle of our heartbreak because we thought he was on the ground in the 6th. But the details of the contract come out. And I think it was Keegan Matheson that tweeted this saying that there's a clause in his deal that if any employee, as it was written, gets fired, that the contract can void after that season. Well, the employee named is his interpreter. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because I'll do it a disservice. But so 2024-25 off season.
We see it again.
Robert Herjavec, stay the hell home. All right, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, he could be a Blue Jay after all. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? It is sort of it is nuts, right? Because there's a lot of speculation going on, and like I said to Jim today, Jim asked me what I thought about it, and of course, I went way too probably deep down the rabbit hole. But I said the exact same thing that you just said. I said it's Shohei Ohtani. He is the golden child of the MLB right now. They need to soak him for everything he's worth. And if this comes out and he did have a part to do with it, not saying that he did, again, but I don't want to, fuel the fire here. But if it did come out, I think it would get swept under the rug before it even had the chance to see the light of day.
Oh, I agree as well. For me, when I saw this news, I'm like, this guy's not on our team. I don't really care. It's the Dodgers' problem now. But now that he has the opportunity for that contract being voided to go through this all again, I don't know if me, along with Blue Jays fans, are mentally prepared for this again. Hopefully, just stay off the planes. I don't want to hear about anyone getting on any planes. I'm tired of the speculation. I don't want to have to go through that emotional roller coaster again.
100%.
But saying that, we'll move on to some disappointing players, or maybe players that we don't see as fulfilling expectations this upcoming season. Skyler, I'm going to give it to you first. Who do you see maybe not performing to expectations this upcoming season?
Yeah, I told Braden when we were talking about the show today at work that I'm the optimist. I want everyone to do well. I don't have anything against. I have things against people, in sports that I just don't like. There's not a guy in the Jays I don't like. That said, I do think that Trevor Richards is nearing the end of his tenure with the Toronto Blue Jays. Just given how the second half he was electric at the start of last year. I wrote this down. I went on Baseball Reference for the first time this year, thanks to you guys having me on today, by the way. So 3.02 ERA before the All-Star game, right on the All-Star game. After the All-Star game, 804. And the second half was just horrendous. He gave up so many homers, and then he couldn't control it around the plate either. So these are often 2-run shots, and things that allowed teams back into games or cushioned leads, in a chance where the Jays had a chance to come back. And the spring training stats haven't looked too great, and he's out of options. I think he's over 30 years old, or maybe he is 30 right on the nose. This is a stout rotation, and he is going to probably be on this opening day roster because of the 17 hurt shoulders that this Blue Jays team has inexplicably right now. But I think I am leaning towards him not being on this team in July compared to him being on it. If I was to set the line, I'd say like he's minus 120 to have been DFA'd or picked up in a small trade.
Yeah, I don't hate that take at all. I think that's on par with sort of where I'm at with Trevor Richards. It's the past few years, it's been pretty up and down for me. I've disliked them. I've liked them. Sometimes I felt bad for him. It's been all over the place. So I think that's fair. And I always say, as much as you want to look into the analytics of baseball and guys are hitting these pitches here, whatever. Baseball is huge on the eye test, and it's the gut feeling, the way a player looks, the way a player moves. It's very like that, and that's sort of just the feeling I get watching Trevor Richards is, one of these days, it's going to fall off the cliff, and that. I think it's a very strong take, and for me, that guy is. I hate to say it because I pray to God that it doesn't, but it's Cavan Biggio. Just with the amount of talent at this second base position, with them wanting to keep IKF at third, I could see Biggio not getting as much playing time as he probably needs to be efficient this year. And I think that could be said for Davis Schneider and Ernie Clement as well. I think if you're splitting the time between these three guys as much as we think they probably are going to be, I think this could hurt all of them, to be realistic.
Oh, I believe so as well. And with Cavan Biggio, he hasn't really shown it at the big league level at all until the second half of last season, where he was hitting around 300, was being incredible, honestly, defensively. Wherever you put him, he was in right field playing sometimes. A lot of good plays at second base, third base, he was playing as well. I'm not as in on Cavan Biggio's underwhelming performance this season. I think he's going to be right where I expect him, but maybe there is this notion of maybe overrating Cavan Biggio a little bit based off what he did last season. I don't like Cavan Biggio is not going to go out there, hit 280 for 25 home runs. He's going to be a guy that's probably around 250, can be productive from the left side, really matchup dependent. But for Cavan Biggio, I can see how fans would definitely overhype him for this upcoming season.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's overhype necessarily. I think everybody knows what Cavan Biggio could be and what he is. But yeah, it's the playing time for me, and you know what? I almost should have just lumped in the Blue Jays second baseman as a whole, because I think this could be a problem that spans through all three of them. And really, I mean, do you want a situation that happens like last year with Davis Schneider, where you don't ride the hot hand and then he falls off a cliff? I could see that definitely happening again to a guy like Ernie Clement or Cavan Biggio.
The one thing I'll add, though, I think if Cavan Biggio kind of gets pushed out of this starting nine for the Jays, it's because Dalton Varsho has a good year and he provides, that pop and that consistency we need from the left side of the plate. So I do think if Cavan's going to get a chance to show it, or Dalton's going to, be the player that I think Blue Jays fans hope he can be. So I don't think we're necessarily in a tough spot with the Cavan Biggio situation, especially given the fact that there are other guys that can play second base clearly.
Yeah. 100%. Carter, who's your biggest? Who do you think the biggest disappointment will be, or your overrated that you think shouldn't be player?
I think Father Time is going to catch up to this player, and unfortunately, a fan favorite, a guy that I love as well, but I think it's going to be Kevin Kiermaier.
The outlaw. I knew you were going to say it.
It's tough to hear, unfortunately, but a guy that hasn't been great this spring training. We have seen a little bit more power from him, which I found interesting. But so far over the spring, he's had 33 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. The K percentage and the average is what scares me a little bit. He's striking out at a whopping 42% of the time. That's never going to play in the major leagues. He's hitting 226 and has an OPS of 789. I'm not worried about Kevin Kiermaier's defensive stats. It's not a problem for me at all. This guy's a gold glover, platinum glover. He's going to be one of the best defenders in the league as well. It's a blessing that we have Dalton Varsho, Kevin Kiermaier, and George Springer is nothing to laugh about either with his defensive skills in our outfield. That's something that we haven't seen since Lourdes Gurriel and Teoscar Hernandez, atrocious performances in the outfield. We've been pretty lucky to have these guys playing for us. But back to Kevin Kiermaier. Last season, his average exit velo was the second lowest of his career. This guy that does have injury concerns. He's had 20 injuries that have kept him out of games since April of 2018. That's nothing to scoff about. He got lucky last season not being injured. Again, he's not going to be playing as many games, which, as we've mentioned with other players on this podcast, it's tough to be productive when you're not playing every day. And I think this is the season where we see Kevin Kiermaier kind of take a step back defensively and maybe not play as much. But hopefully he can just produce his career averages. If he can go out there and hit 245 at the bottom of the lineup with his base running ability and his speed, I'm not going to be too mad about it. But with Kevin Kiermaier's highs last season hitting 265, I just don't see that translating to this upcoming season.
Well, Skyler, I'll let you start on Kevin Kiermaier.
Not to insult the pick, Carter, but I think it is kind of the easy pick. Like, I do think if people look at this roster, they're gonna look at the old guy that has to run them all over the place, right? And pray to God you're wrong. Obviously, I think you do too. And I do think the health has something to do with the way the Blue Jays manage their outfielders. Kevin Kiermaier has never had guys on both sides of him as good as Dalton Varsho and George Springer, obviously. And B, I do think playing at Rogers Center over Tropicana Field has something to do with that too. So I do think there's some optimism on the injury front. But yeah, like you said, I think we got to set the expectations realistic for Kevin Kiermaier. I do think he's not going to live up to 2023 levels. Came in saying he wanted to be the best 9-hitter in the league. He was for quite a long period to start the season. Yeah. So I think he's got something to give to this team for sure. Really happy they brought him back. But no, I agree that he's, we've probably seen his peak as a member of the Blue Jays, and that was last year for sure.
Yeah, and we've talked about, what Dalton Varsho brings to the table. And if he has a big season, then we could see him move into that center field position, and a guy like Cavan Biggio or Davis Schneider or whoever moves into that left field, and maybe it opens up another chance to have another bigger bat. So it could be a problem of circumstance, I'll say, for Kevin Kiermaier, where if Dalton Varsho's playing really well, Kevin Kiermaier's having an average Kevin Kiermaier season here, I could see that pushing him out of the lineup as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. Skyler, we appreciate you coming on. We're going to have to do this more often because, somehow we've talked for 52 minutes, and I think so. You have to go watch the Jets game. We want to thank you for coming on. We're gonna have to do this more. It was a blast. And bugging you about gambling habits is like one of my new favorite pastimes, I think, aside from baseball and hot dogs.
I should have. You do it again on the next time you have me on. I'll load up the chart, buddy. I look like Berkshire Hathaway here. Like you should start investing with me, honestly, because you just tell me the amount of times you go down to zeros in your FanDuel account. I'm just out here printing bread, bro. I'm gonna do it tonight with Jets money line. So,
well, you used to send me text messages.
Great time. So yeah, I did send you a couple picks last week. They didn't hit. Sorry about that, but we'll be back. Thanks for having me, boys. This is great. Super jazzed to get out to Toronto next week, even though the Jays start the season in Tampa, obviously. But I think there's gonna be some buzz around the Raj, and I'm gonna pick up a jersey next Friday morning. I don't know what it's gonna be. I pray to God it's not a Fanatics one. Hopefully they have something better on the rack. And we'll see you next time, boys. It's been a pleasure.
For sure. Carter, do you want to send it one more time to our streaming service, and then we'll get out of here?
Yeah, two things before we head out. Just wanted to throw it over to our Locked On 24/7 streaming channel. Obviously, the NFL free agency is going crazy as well. NHL is going on. My Panthers are making a lot of moves. Probably not going to be too productive for the team anyway because we're not very good. But it is what it is. I do like following along anyway. And you guys should take the opportunity to do that as well with our Locked On streaming channel. So just go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. And the other thing, before we do send it out, is Skyler. I know you did talk about the Jays win total. You said it's above 90, but I don't think you gave us a number. I just wanted to let the fans know what your win total for the Blue Jays is this upcoming season.
Yes, I didn't say what I thought they would be. I think they're going over 86.5. I'm going to sprinkle 90 plus, but I actually do think they're going to be an 89 win team this year.
And that's exactly what I have too. So